Roberts and Roberts Brokerage and Libertopia are pleased to present Manhood, More Vital Than Politics by Ken Royce, also known as Boston Tea Party, author of 13 books and the founder of freestatewyoming.org.
Who else would you have to write on something that's important for Generation Next to come in and learn modules of manhood? That's one thing that we're missing. And I'm glad that, Boston's here to talk about it, because it's something that I think as we take on the responsibility of raising our own children, that there are things that we should know and understand and think of the importance that he's taken the time with his skills to make available to us. Modules for Manhood by Kenneth Royce, my friend, Boston Tea Party.
I'm tethered to the stage here. Cool. Only tether I allow in life, huh? First time at Libertopia. Very happy to be here. I've spoken at a few other liberty-oriented groups, such as Freedom Summit, Liberty Forum in Nashua, Doug Casey's Era Society. Anybody ever been to an Era Society? Had those until the late 90s. And so these things are always different, always funky, unique, and the flavor is always something memorable to take home. So I've enjoyed coming to California, especially by small airplane. And that's been an adventure, landing at San Diego at night in a small plane. So it's been a very interesting and fun trip. And I'm very honored to have been asked to speak about a new book and a new direction, a departure from where I've been. And I think a lot of the subjects that I've been passionate about and have written about can come together, oddly enough, in a sort of a remedial self-help book for men. It started out for young men, but the more I got into it, the more I started learning modules that I needed to complete, stuff that was lacking in myself. So instead of modules for manhood, what every man under 21 must know, then it became man under 25, then 30, then 45. Then I just scrapped the age, requirement whatsoever, and just what every man must know. Because I think every man can get something out of this, and it's not just for men, but it is male-oriented, manhood-oriented, issues of masculinity and so forth. However, it's still a human condition kind of subject, especially the first volume. It's going to be 3 volumes. The other 2 are pretty much complete, but as you all know, the hardest part is finishing, something. You can get 95% there, and the other 5% seems to take as long as the previous 95%. I'll give you kind of an overview of how I got here. Why am I writing about this sort of thing? I have to congratulate the folks that are here, because it's only a small and cherished few that have come to realize through education and passion in their minds and bones that not aggressing on their fellow man is really the way to live. And it's equally a small group that understand the wisdom of free markets and how to distribute the resources of mankind. Now, if all of mankind would honor these 2 principles and stick by them, the world would become unrecognizably better and a long way towards Libertopia. However, it is with no conflict to these excellent political and economic philosophies that I've somewhat moved on. Reflective of our libertopian theme, I've never been content with merely writing or talking about liberty. Freedom and liberty are not mere abstractions I'm waiting for or longing to enjoy. They are the context and mindset with which I make real-life, everyday choices. It's what my life I try to make looks like outside my front door every day. I've moved on to providing pointers and giving others a jump start and the means of building themselves into excellent human beings, myself included as a work in progress. The kind of people who tend to create the freedom and liberty they want and are about to use. Now, an excellent man demands liberty. An average man doesn't even care for the liberty he already has. They sit around playing games with plot lines of immortality while living a life not worth dying for. Part of what led me on this path is something that is becoming increasingly recognized by most of you here, that one can be a wonderful and inspiring human being or a complete and utter scoundrel, while still remaining completely within the bounds of libertarianism and the non-aggression principle. And getting at that is what I'm trying to attack with my book. The NAP is good as far as it goes, but it's a great interpersonal philosophy, but it's not a complete intrapersonal, philosophy or dogma. There's still elements inside human life that non-aggression principles aren't really going to reach. Questions of style, morality, preference, purpose, wisdom, communication, laziness, patience, pride, integrity, character, decisions, work, health, gentlemanly behavior, husbanding, fatherhood, suffering, and living. These preferences and decisions present a man with a wide latitude of choice, strategy, and tactics, completely outside the realm of what libertarianism can help him decide. A young man cannot stop at reading Rothbard, von Mises, Hazlitt, and expect the areas I've listed to fill themselves in as if by some sort of libertarian osmosis. And yet these areas make the character of the man and shape the arc of his life. The NAP and the free markets do not, in and of themselves, make for strong, patient, courageous gentlemen of honor who can defend themselves, their families, and their communities against aggression. So how does a man make the right decision when faced with a sea of unknowns and where there are no external or visible threats but for the squandering of his own life? We hear a lot about owning yourself, owning your life, owning your body, the fruits of your labor, and so forth. And that makes perfect sense in the four dimensions that we are very comfortable with and that are familiar to us as socks on our feet. Space and time, basically. But as probably some of you know, mathematicians and physicists have postulated with pretty good solid inference that there are at least 10, if not 11 dimensions, especially in the superstring theory. So, okay, we own ourselves in the four, all right? What about the other 6 or 7? What's going on there? Do we really own ourselves in that metaphysical, weird space? Are we living in an ANCAP world, or trying to make an ANCAP world in the 4 dimensions, but living under a tyranny or a monarchy, in all 10 or 11, depending on your views of the Creator or how we got here. Life is a strange thing. And, it could be a holographic projection, as many movies have suggested, like The Matrix and so forth. Physicists are trying to get to a point where they can prove that whether or not we are living in a holographic context. It's called holographic simulation. You can look it up in several sources. If you're living in the cube, like in the Star Trek when they put what was the name of that character? They put him in the little cube, and he can spin his little evil guts out forever. Could he prove he was in the cube? And try to find a way out of the cube. We don't know, but we're starting to think about these things. But my point is, the NAP and libertarianism and owning your own body and making your own decisions and owning your life, perhaps that really only is relevant within the 4 dimensions. And we don't know what kind of construct we're under and what kind of constraints we're under, what kind of duties we may have in the other. Not to get mystical on you, and metaphysical and all that, but life is a tricky, strange thing. So I think it's important to not focus so much on politics and philosophy at the expense of things that politics and philosophy don't easily get to inside the human core. And I can touch on some of these things. It's like describing, something by inference, and after enough of this, perhaps, we can kind of get a handle on it. But I'll give you the chapter list of the first volume of Modules for Manhood. And you can see where I'm going with this. As I said, it's 3 volumes, and it's sort of sequential in the building blocks, I think, that are necessary for a quality human being to help develop himself. And it's kind of like trying to build a 10-story building without having first built the foundation or the first floor and all that. And you're excited about building the penthouse suite when you've got nothing else underneath it. I think we need to start from the ground up on a lot of stuff. So chapter 1 in volume 1 would be understanding. Just like, as Phil says, you either get it, Dr. Phil, you either get it or you don't, right? There's a lot of things in life that you just sort of have to get first, because if you don't, you're going to operate with a very odd context of misunderstanding. And, a lot of the stuff is about you. A lot of the stuff is about people, how the world works, money, and so forth. So, garbage in, garbage out, trusting your gut, We're spiritual beings having a physical experience. I mean, that's worth a book in itself. Whatever you think about, you will do. Whatever you do, you will become. You know, be very careful about what goes in your mind, because it's going to percolate there and turn into action somewhere. You run your day, or your day runs you. Eyes and ears versus one mouth, it's a 4-to-1 input-output ratio. So I think it's good to be quiet and just listen and hear more. Worry never solves anything. Accomplishment is what creates happiness. You know, these are vignettes, and they're related, but it's likely not about you. That's a tough one to learn. Oh, here's a good one. All ambiguous behavior is interpreted negatively. Just because our egos think, well, it's about us. You know, they didn't call back. Did I piss them off? Are they mad at me? Or they, you know, did I offend them or something like that? You know, they just lost their phone for half a day. No, it's not about you. Mind your own business. The height of maturity is taking responsibility for yourself. I read a lot of self-help books just to mine good nuggets in there. And the main thing that any good self-help book will say is you've got to accept responsibility for your actions. This is key. It goes back through every culture. The samurai made practically a religion of it. They had something interesting to say. They said, when you say a thing, you own that thing. There's no need to promise to show up on Saturday. I said I would show up on Saturday. I've created that action in a future universe, and I will be there Saturday. A samurai doesn't promise. You know, I will be there, and that's the end of it, period. So responsibility is the flip side of freedom, and I think that's probably the main reason most people don't want freedom, is because they sense, or if not know, that if they're free, if they have liberty, the other side of that is the responsibility. And I don't think we have a sheep society or slave society. I think we have a childish society, where the average populace, regardless of their age, emotionally is about, 14, 15 years old, and they still want to live under daddy's roof with the cell phones and, food and all that. They've got their own car. They have some restrictions, and they chafe at those, but they can live with that. But they don't want to grow up. Most people, I think, at least in this country, just do not want to grow up. And so they're going to resist the responsibility that is concomitant with a free, productive, own my own life human being. And I think this is the main resistance to libertarianism, the NAP and so forth, is, they just want to stay a 16-year-old with all the goodies at home, because it's good enough. I'll make another metaphor about that. People say, the Mexican immigrants, the undocumented workers, or whatever you want to call them, they come here to be free. They're a ripe, fertile source of becoming converts in the libertarian sense. I'm not so sure about that, because leaving Mexico doesn't mean you want to become free because you came to the United States. It just means you want to become freer than you were when you were still in Mexico, right? Just because they came here doesn't mean it's some sort of litmus test for libertarian soil. They get here and they're satisfied with the increased freedoms that they have, but they're not going to take it that much further in a libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, stateless kind of sense. So I think they're in good company with the average American who just wants to remain a kept man, a kept woman. Because as you know, run your own business, live your own life. It's tough. It's day in and day out, being responsible for everything you do. And why would they want that? It's like the movie Wag the Dog. Well, why are they at war with us? Well, they want our freedoms. Why do they want freedoms? Why would they want liberty? I'm not convinced that folks do. So understanding is the first chapter. Second chapter, and I'll go through this real quickly. Thinking, truth, and wisdom. Chapter 3, integrity and character. Chapter 4 is a big one. Conquering your fear, depression, laziness, anger, impatience, and pride. Wow. I think probably most of those probably would resolve to pride. If you look at impatience, how dare they make me wait? Fear is a sense of pride. I think is the bottom of fear is pride. You have a right to be fearful of that. Your silly phobia is greater than whatever the phobia is about. Laziness, certainly that would be pride. How dare they wake me up early in the morning to so I have to be responsible. Depression, that's a tough one. That's probably related to a lot of other things, maybe anger. But anyway, I'm not a psychologist by any means, but I think I've got some ideas on conquering some of these bugaboos that get in the way of all of us. Chapter 5, individuality, courage, and manhood. That's probably in this book the most manly related of the chapters. Chapter 6, getting along better with people. I learned a lot about that as a thinker and an introvert and someone who grew up without siblings and a few cousins and all that. So I've had to learn a lot through my life about being with people and considering other people and getting out of the me mode and into the we mode. Communication, chapter 7, persuading. All of us are selling something every minute of the day. I'm selling something, my sincerity, my knowledge, blah, blah, blah. You're selling your attention, and so forth here. We're all trying to persuade each other of something. And I'm not a salesman. My marketing of my books and my publishing is the weakest aspect of my business because I'm just not a salesman. And I don't like to be sold to, but we still need to know how to persuade. And that comes in handy with haggling, bargaining, trading, and stuff like that. So I've got some great tips on persuading. 3 more chapters, selling and then learning and training. Learning and training is a good chapter. Not necessary to go to college for every young person, and probably advantageous if you don't. At least think outside that box. Think outside the automatic 100K in student debt that you're going to get for a degree that's not very marketable. It's an interesting age coming. People are really interested only in what you can do for them, all right? People are selfish. People are self-motivated, self-energized, and it's like, what can you do for me? So the way to make money is, every dollar I've ever received in my life came from another person, right? And how did I get that? Exchange of perceived value. How do I get more money? Increase my perceived value to my market. And there's many ways to do this. A great book called What Color is Your Parachute? It's about a young person going to college and trying to figure out his career path and therefore his degree path. Not that I recommend going to college, as I said, automatically. But something interesting out of that book is they break down what everyone does in life is really related to 3 sort of areas. You either work with people, you either work with information, or you work with things, sometimes a combination. A salesman, or I'll put a massage therapist, definitely a people-oriented industry, right? Information, computer programmer. Things, car mechanic. There can be an overlap in that, but generally people fall into one of those 3 things, and What Color is Your Parachute helps you get to the bottom of where you are in those 3. Okay, what kind of people would you like to work with? Old people, young people, alive people, dead people. Some people work with dead people. They're called morticians. What's your day like? What's your ideal day? A really good way to kind of figure out as a young person where you might go in life is to shadow a few professions. If you thought about being a firefighter, go hang out at the fire station for a couple of days versus having gone to firefighting school, becoming a firefighter, you get on the job and you find out it's not for you. Go shadow a couple things and learn what this feels like, because the rhythm of life is what you're going to get no matter what slot you choose in life. So you might as well figure out what that rhythm is and if it's your rhythm. And the last chapter in volume 1 is, I think, my favorite. It's called Doing, Action. And Theodore Roosevelt had a great quote, as he often did, even though, all right, yeah, he was a statist in some sense and all that, but you've got to consider the man, from his times also. But no one would argue that he wasn't truly a man of action. And the quote I like is this: get action, do things, be sane. Don't flitter away your time, create, act, take a place wherever you are, and be someone. Get action. What a quirky way to say it. I'm kind of out of action. I need to go get some action. I think of action as a doing thing, go act, but he forms it as a noun, which I think is very interesting. So that's an outline of the book. The volumes 2 and 3 get into more practical stuff. As you can see, the groundwork is sort of laid inside the person in volume 1. Volume 2, teaching, deciding, prioritizing, solving, how to solve problems. There's a way to do this. Power, what to do with power. Everybody has power over someone else, even if it's a street bum has power over someone else if they recognize it. guy asks for a quarter, no, I don't want to give you a quarter. And if he starts screaming, don't hit me, don't hit me, all right, he's got power over you, according to the rest of the audience. They'll turn and think you're beating up this guy on the street. Okay? This is a guy with no money whatsoever, a stranger until a minute ago. Everyone can have power over someone else. And power is not necessarily evil or unethical everywhere you go. And I analyzed Schopenhauer's The Art of Controversy. Anybody read that? 38 Principles. Yeah, very interesting stuff. So I think there are ways to have power over people that are ethical, and there are ways that are not. So I talk about that. Leadership, working in success, savings and debt, money and inflation, taxes, government, fighting. I don't call it self-defense, I call it fighting. You know, someone else started a fight, you know, hopefully if I've done my job, I'm going to win the fight. Volume 3, eating well. I mean, every bite of food you eat is making a new you somewhere. So, you know, is that 99-cent Burger King Whopper really such a bargain? You know, have you saved up the $7 in negative health effects it's going to have, you know, months or years down the road? Health, moving. What I mean moving is locomoting yourself on the planet, whether it's walking around or flying airplanes or everything in between. Surviving. Then some good stuff here. Pursuing a woman, loving a woman, husbanding, fathering. Believing in a spiritual sense, how to know God, suffering, and then living. So those are the 35 chapters of the 3 volumes. You can get an idea of kind of where I'm trying to go here. Now, having been in this freedom thing since '92, it's actually 22 years this month, my first book came out. When it came out, Bo Gritz was an independent candidate in the '92 elections. Remember Bo Gritz? Clinton had just gotten elected. I mean, this seems a long time ago. We've had a few presidents since then. There was no internet back then, certainly no Bitcoin. A lot has happened, but some things are still the same. Some things lacking in us are still there. So I'm trying to get, not so much in the philosophical or the political refinement of things, because other people are doing that very well. I'm trying to refine myself. And as I do that, maybe I can help you refine yourself also. One author's talking about there's 4 kinds of people. Which one are you? There's the cop-outs, the holdouts, the dropouts, and the all-outs. The cop-outs have no goals. The holdouts have goals but never with commitment. The dropouts have goals but with lost commitment. The all-outs set goals, commit, pay the price to win. And we all vary in that because we're human and, you know, we can't all be all-outs all the time. But it's hard to argue with those 4 categories, you know, in any kind of subject. What I'd like for the fellows here, especially the younger guys, to take away from a talk like this is basically stop existing as a boy, okay? Just because someone is a male and just someone is 25 or 30 or 40 or something like that does not make you a man, okay? You're only a man if you can cope with the world at large in a general and victorious sense, no matter what the world throws at you. If you're a male and you have to call for another male to help you out of something, you're still lacking something, whether it's to fix your car, or you call the cops to defend you, or you've got kind of an emotional issue that is a simple one, but you just haven't really gelled as a man, and you're just floundering in something. You've got to call someone. There's nothing wrong with calling people, but there's a lot of ungelled fellas out there, and it's going to make a difference, especially if they want to marry and have families, okay? Because you can't give what you don't have. And if you want to get married and have a family, you better really be on your game as a man, okay? If you have any doubts about that, wait. I had immaturities in me in my 30s, and I knew I would make a woman, modestly unhappy here and there. And so I didn't want to get married and cause the woman I loved to deal with someone who's still immature. So, I'm not holding myself out as some exemplar of, the mature man. I'm growing every day like anyone else. But a man needs to be able to cope. And where the origin of this book came from is I'm going to read something from Jeff Cooper. Anybody know who Jeff Cooper was? Founder of Gunsight Training Academy. Before he did that in Arizona in the 70s, there wasn't a civilian academy to go to learn how to properly shoot, especially with what's called the modern technique of handguns. And this is something Jeff and a few other shooters back in the 50s and the 60s scientifically worked out. Before that, they had the Olympic style of shooting. It would be like this. It's a silly way to shoot. And, people were not winning their gunfights just because, they're not having their whole body, used isometrically with themselves and so forth. So anyway, Jeff's Gunsight Training Academy was the first one. A lot of shooters today and other academies such as Front Sight, Nash Piazza, he came from Gunsight as a student. Clint Smith was a range officer at Gunsight. He's had Thunder Ranch for years and so forth. So Cooper has had an amazingly wide and deep effect in the tactical culture. But right before he died in 2006, in his newsletter, I don't know if someone asked him the question or he just came up with this as something of his own interest, but he's basically saying, here we go. What should a young male of 21 know, and what should he be able to do? There are no conclusive answers to those questions, but they're certainly worth asking. A young man should know how this country is run and how it got that way. He should know the Federalist Papers into Tocqueville, recent world history. If he doesn't know what has been tried in the past, he cannot very well avoid those pitfalls as they come up again in the future. Should be computer literate. Moreover, should know Hemingway from James Joyce, know how to drive a car well, such as not covered in driver's ed. He's talking about going to Bondurant school. That's how to drive a car well. Should know how to fly a light airplane. That was a thorn in me as an absence. I wanted to be a pilot since I was a kid, and just never made it a goal. And finally, I realized I've got the time, I've got the money, and I've always had the desire, and I just went out and did it, 2 years ago. And so I've racked up a lot of hours in a couple of years and trying to catch up. And I have to thank Jeff for should fly a light airplane, He should know how to shoot well, obviously. He should know elementary geography, both worldwide and local, have a cursory knowledge of both zoology and botany. He should know the fundamentals of agriculture and corporate economy, well qualified in armed combat, boxing, wrestling, judo, or its equivalent. He should know how to manage a motorcycle, be comfortable at least one foreign language, more if appropriate to his background. He should be familiar with remedial medicine. These things should be accomplished before a son leaves his father's household. Now, that's a tall order. Okay, I didn't get that. All right, yeah, he's looking with big wide eyes like, wow, I can do 4 or 5 of those things, but the rest, wow. I felt the same way when I read some of this. They do not constitute a, quote, college education, which may or may not be a trade school. That quote harkens back to Heinlein's specialization is for insects. Yeah, con a ship, change a diaper, deliver a eulogy, etc. Not that, we're going to be called to do all these things, but my sense of being a man is being able to shoulder whatever comes my way, especially if I'm going to have a family. And anybody who feels themselves to be a conscientious and responsible husband, and their wife says, you always have to be right. Anybody have heard that? Any married guys here have heard that? You always have to be right. Now, a guy with a family, he's got the perfect retort. He said, yeah, honey, that's right. I always have to be right because I've got so much riding on me, I can't afford to be wrong for your sake. And that's the way a responsible man should feel. He should glory in the weight of being a man, of being a productive human being that is growing, helmsmanship of his family. He should glory in that weight on his shoulders and want more. Be a leader in his community and stretch himself. Every man really needs to live on his edge. And we've all got edges, like this table. If you're safe back in the middle, I know there's an edge because I can see where it kind of drops off about a mile from there. Get right up to that edge, look over and scare yourself, all right? Face it. Once you do, guess what? That edge recedes because you've conquered that piece of fear, and that edge recedes, meaning you've expanded yourself. I've scared myself flying by pushing myself a little bit, a crosswind component that was not in my comfort zone, but it's going to be. I'm going to get there. And fortunately, I haven't taken too big of bites, and so I'm here. I'm here to talk to you, because otherwise, had I taken some big chances, it's easy to bugger it, in a small plane. But a guy really needs to find his edges, go there, face his fears, so that they evaporate. He becomes bigger. He's going to have another itch somewhere else. Go there too. It's the only way to grow. And anything in life, if it's not growing, it's dying. There's no stagnation, there's no stasis, there's no neutral buoyancy, there's no staying put. You're either, get busy living or get busy dying, as Red said in Shawshank Redemption. So we've got to be expanding ourselves, and to do that, you've got to face some anxiety here and there.
I think that was Bob Dylan too, wasn't it?
You think it was Bob who was the original one?
It was a line from one of his songs.
Get busy living, get busy dying. Then Red quoted it. Cool. To backtrack just a little bit, I think it's very important as a man to know what your purpose is. Maybe less so as a woman. I think men are very purpose-driven. Someone once wrote that for a man to feel good, he must first do good. And this is why it's so very, very socially painful for large groups of men to be unemployed, because they feel adrift. They're not contributing. They're not supporting themselves or their family. And it really eats at them, differently than women, I think. I think women are different, where they need to feel good before they do good. And you put those two together, and to me this says that a man really must love his woman first versus expecting the woman to love him first. She's the receiving vessel. She needs to be loved first, and then she'll magnify that and turn that back around and bless him with a greater love than he put in. But men have to take responsibility in that sense. Yet again, responsibility in being a man. Love your woman first. Make her feel good first. Then she'll cheerfully do whatever you all have agreed is, her sphere of the household. But a guy needs to find his purpose in order to plug himself into his destiny. Okay? Because we all have one, And most likely it's something you really love to do, but you've made excuses for why I can't do it, or it's too expensive, or the timing's not right, or what if people laugh at me, or what if I fail, and what if, and I can get into some what ifs in this book. Finding your purpose, even if you're middle-aged or old age, it's never too late. It would have been best if you found it when you were 15, but today will do too. It's like that phrase, when's the best time to plant a tree? 30 years ago, when's the second best time? Today. Finding your purpose is the same way. And there are a lot of deeper understandings into the human psychology that make that easier to discover for yourself. There's personality inventory tests like Myers-Briggs. I like that a lot. There's the Enneagrams and so forth. Getting a handle on kind of who you are and what makes you tick is really important. Otherwise, as a young man, you're going to be at the hub of a wagon wheel, and you've got all these spokes, which are your potential choices of career, destiny, where you're going to live, and so forth. And before you embark down a spoke, you really need to know that it's pretty close to being the right one, if not the right one. Because if you go up this spoke, the farther you go, the farther away you are from its reciprocal spoke, right? If you have to do a 180 and get back to there. So you've got to make the right decision as early as possible so you don't waste time. And finding your purpose, even if it's a belated discovery, is the quickest way to save time in your life. There are people, probably more than 50% die doing stuff that they really rather wouldn't have done, okay? So therefore they married someone that, was kind of different than who they really were and wanted, and they lived someplace they didn't care for at the end of their lives. People die with regret, and there's no reason for it. You've got to be introspective and be honest. Someone recommended Byron Katie's The Work. Anybody heard of that? Yeah, and it's basically, I haven't done it yet, it's sort of a personal inventory kind of questionnaire. And it looks very interesting, it looks very powerful, a tool to do it. So finding your purpose, you can't skip that step. A fella just cannot skip that step. Other ways of self-improvement, I like Ben Franklin's The 13 Daily Virtues. Has everyone read the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin? It's a small book. You can find it at a used bookstore for $1. This is a guy at 17, pulled himself out of a lowly upbringing, lots of brothers and sisters, not much opportunity for him, raised himself up by his own bootstraps in a very concerted, scientific, determined way. And once he got to become an adult and was successful as a printer and then a politician and a scientist and all that, I think he was still using his program where he would grade himself daily on his industry, his frugality, his temperance, his silence. Wow. His order, resolution, sincerity, justice, moderation, cleanliness, tranquility, chastity, and humility. And he wanted to, have a goal of not slipping in these areas, and he took account of it, just like a tennis star would measure his, his serve percentages or something. If I could give a young guy, I think the best piece of advice, and y'all not going to like it, of, where do I find time to do the things, that Jeff Cooper said you ought to learn how to do and all this? How do I find time to increase my skill set and all that? Stop all this video entertainment, all this screen time. I read there are people, watching, stuff or Xbox or Wii or whatever. I don't even know all the stuff. 1,000 hours a year. That's a part-time job, because a full-time job is 2,000 hours a year. 1,000 hours a year times 5 years, 5,000 hours. I mean, you could be a surgeon, practically in that time. You could, what you can do with an hour a day if you gave a damn. I put this in the introduction because someone said, well, not everyone can fly a small airplane. Not everyone can travel. Not everyone can learn this. And I say, well, that's true. But, what can you do? What can you do where you are right now? By the 12th grade, a boy has spent 8,000 hours in the classroom and 12,000 hours in front of video screens. Okay? Dump the video crap, start learning real stuff. I know the video thing is very alluring, and it's getting more alluring still. Man, it'll be 3D, and they'll jack it into your head within 10 years, and you're going to be screwed if you go that route, because it has to be like a drug, like a serotonin pump, going on. You never get out of that if you go there. You've got one life here, and this one isn't a dress rehearsal. Okay, this is the real deal, at least in this dimension. Acquire actual skills which can fulfill your purpose, make you money, help people, and thrill women. I mean, isn't that what guys want? In less than 6 hours a week in a year, you'll achieve any one of these. And I'm writing this to a high schooler, okay? Speak an entirely new language credibly well. The 4-Hour Work Week guy, Timothy Ferris, he's got videos on learning a language pretty quickly. And I speak Spanish and German, and his Spanish and German seem pretty good. I listened to his little paragraph. You could own basic and reflexive skills in a solid martial art, okay? Also free to do. Become a confident dancer, ballroom, swing, whatever. You can learn to fly a small airplane and become a private pilot. That takes about $8,000 to $10,000. You can spread it out over a year. If you want to learn how to fly, I recommend a quicker tempo, because you're going to forget less. You're just going to keep going and not have to rebuild. Learn actual skills which are useful, self-enlarging, manly, and even lucrative. Stop buying stuff and paying for transitory entertainment, especially on credit. You should learn what is important, insist on top quality, pay cash, buy the best, take delivery. Very important point. Lose the fat, lose the pink jello. Find some muscle underneath, because being fit has paybacks everywhere. And if you go through life as a shuffling, fat lump, man, your sex drive is bad. You don't get out in the sunshine. There's many things you just physically can't do. It's like, wow, eat well, exercise, and honor yourself as a human being, as a man. Why wear that particular earth suit when you can change it and have a studly one? Find people of action and goals and integrity and associate only with them. This is why we're all here, okay? Because we care about stuff that matters, and we're trying to do things that have an effect, that make a difference. Be boosted by human quality, and we've been doing that all weekend. Go home and do the same, although it's hard to find people of quality. Courage is also a muscle. Exercise it daily in these spheres. Courage is very multifaceted. There's a social courage, there's a financial courage, there's a physical courage, there's a moral courage. Find out where you're weak and start to, exercise that. Become courageous, because, our women expect that of us, I think. Ladies, wouldn't you like your man to be, my guy's a badass, he's brave, he's courageous, he won't back down, on something that he knows is wrong. That's not in all of us to the same degree. Face your fears, live your dreams, but you've got to learn what those are. So in closing, I would recommend highly not putting the cart before the horse. And the cart is philosophy and politics behind who you are. Okay, if we sloughed off tyranny, right, some way, somehow, what's the point if at the end we're just ruled by the boy we have remained? So man up, do the right thing, and let's see you next year with some good, successful stories. Thank you all. Do we have a moment for some Q&A? A couple. All right. He'll pass the mic to anybody with a question. Any comment or question someone might have about this? Yes, Angela.
Hey, I'm sure you covered this, but why is it gender specific? Those are all traits I want to have. Those are all traits my old man told me I better have if I wanted to make something of myself.
Right.
So, but there's a great list of stuff. I think it applies for all of us, though, doesn't it?
It does. I think the entire package of what I'm saying probably seems more, in a masculine sense. I don't want women in physical combat, and I think most of them want to go there too. So, but yeah, you're right. These are all human traits, but I think the whole package of what I'm talking about is inherently a manly thing. So that's my shtick. Anybody else? Any comments or other questions? Yeah.
There seems to be an impression that over the last number of decades, I think going back into the 1950s, in popular entertainment, there has been a large extent a kind of thing of disapproval about what you were talking about, manliness and this sort of thing. What do you think is behind this?
I think there are some clever people that write some very clever stuff. If you've noticed TV shows, they're denigrating the husband, they're denigrating the father. Al Bundy, the guy's a dumb shit, or he's an oaf or something like that. A snappy woman rules the household, and he's, yes, dear, kind of thing like that. Of course, there are households like that, but there's not even accidentally a show about, a guy that just stands up for being himself, who's not embarrassed by his testosterone. Jesse Stone, probably exception. Anybody seen the Jesse Stone series? Tom Selleck. He's a police chief in Paradise, Massachusetts. And he's just this quiet, get it done kind of guy. But that's the only TV show I've seen. So I think there's been an assault on manhood because it encapsulates a lot of human qualities that are important. Not that women can't have them too, but if we want to get stuff done, we got to be masculine about getting it done. Where are the men in this country that put up? Why do men put up with their wives being fondled at the airport? All right. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Right. So I'm.
Somebody said it.
Yeah. You touch my wife like that, I'll clock your ass. Make my wife cry? Are you kidding me? Man, there's a price for someone that makes my woman cry. You cry too. That's the price. So I think there's been a concerted assault on these values and on manhood. And that's a whole other subject, a whole other topic. Any other questions? Okay, we'll close it here so we can get to Jeffrey's final closing thing. Thank you all for your attention. Good to see you.
Thank you for watching this presentation. Visit Roberts & Roberts online at rrbi.co for all your precious metals needs. Roberts & Roberts not only accepts Bitcoin, they prefer it. If you enjoyed this video, also consider donating to Red Pill Productions.